जब वो उसके घर का पहला शॉट है, जब वो बोर्डिंग स्कूल से निकल रहा होता है, वो टी शर्ट पहन के निकलता है एंड बैक पे उसके टी शर्ट के लिखा है लव एंड हैप्पीनेस। और जब वो घर पे आके बैठता है एंड व्हेन यू सी हिज टी शर्ट, वो एल का शेप कुछ इस तरह से बना है कि आगे जाके वो एस में ज्वाइन हो जाता है, जहाँ पे लिखा होता है लूज हैप्पीनेस।
माय गॉड। If you are asked to make a sequel for Udan, like right after the film where it ends, where do you think it will go? And if you have a chance to make a sequel, where will you take the film? Do you think the father will be back, or will he go to Mumbai? Kya hoga? What is your idea for a sequel?
I think if there's a sequel, there will be like two tracks going on so that we can have a contrast of how the father's life went on and how the children's went on in their Mumbai journey or whatever. I'm pretty sure it will not be all as happy ever after as it seems after the end of the movie. They will have their own like problems and I think they would. I think both the parties would have some sort of inclination to go back to each other because I don't think they hated their father as much as like they hated the behavior. The father was also going through a lot of his own mental issues or whatever psychological issues. So he is not like a bad person by heart, but he just has developed this temperament which right now is so toxic that it seems like it is almost like he's a devil. But I think there is some heart to him also somewhere, very hidden, but it is there.
Yeah, I think that will also be a better way to wrap it up at the end of the second of the sequel. Ki, you know, they had a couple of moments together which were good, but
Right.
you know, they're not meant to stay together.
I think it will have like Sarat like face. Have you seen Sarat? So when they move to the town, and there's a strict reality there that hits them. So I think Rohan would have a lot of growing up to do, and he is not prepared for taking care of a child. So I think he would be doing a lot of learning in that way. Maybe he would turn like Bhairav also in moments like when it is intense between them. So I don't know how it will go, but it will be more grounded, I think.
But I hope it doesn't end like Sarat. Matlab,
No.
I was thinking that if there's a sequel, like, this is called Udaan, that should probably be called Pravas. I mean, my Hindi might not be so great, but then Pravas means migration, right? Because, like, even they're moving to a new city now, it's not exactly going to be all hunky-dory for them. They have to, like, figure it out on their own. I mean, there is Rohan, who's, like, barely he's not even completed school, and he's just moved to another city with, like, a little kid to care for. And so for both of them, yes, they're out of this abusive household and all of that. But I feel the second film, like, it might be about them figuring out life on their own, like trying to grow up together. So Udaan is a coming of age story. I think even this will be a coming of age story in a different kind of way. It just shows them evolving after escaping from an abusive household.
I would like to see both the boys being fathers themselves and how they parent their children, as opposed to how Bhairav Singh has done it. So that would be interesting. How much of their fathers they carry, and how much of it, because we always have this fear that we'll be our parents, right? We'll end up being our parents, becoming our parents. So do they have the same fear, and do they carry it? So yeah, that would be interesting for me to watch.
you know, actually, it could be the younger brother Arjun's wedding or somewhere around that, where the elder guy already has a kid and some things going on. Right?
I'm thinking of a prequel where we will explore Ronit Roy's character and how he changed, how he became the antagonist. We saw him only as one-dimensional character, that he's a rude father, toxic, but inside him there will be something nice. So what is that? And how the relationship changed between Ronit Roy and Ram Kapoor, what happened between them. And he had two marriages before, and he's planning to have the third marriage. Why he is not settled with a single marriage? What is his mental trauma? It is not explored. The characters of his sons are explored, but why his character is not explored. So I would like to make a prequel.
You know, when I was watching the film as well, मेरे दिमाग में बार बार आ रहा था कि that idea of a Chakravyuh, of an idea of you being in a loop. The way Rohan was not bullying, sorry, the way he was treating Arjun as well, it felt like he was stuck in a loop. and he ended that loop of bullying and being that kind of a guy by being the empathetic brother, that a supporting brother that one would want. Would love to see how whether the beginning of Bhairav Singh was the same as the beginning of this guy, but the circumstances made Bhairav Singh who he eventually became. Maybe this guy will not become that because times have changed or he is different. Just so yeah, would be very interesting. Yeah.
I can draw a lot of parallels for some reason, like not parallels, but like alternative stories to take ahead. First of all, Truman, of course, because like even we had discussed in that session as well that what would happen when he goes out. So I guess even though he is unexperienced and he will be facing a lot of like harsh realities, but I guess since he has faced so much difficult times with his own family members, it won't be that much hard to deal with people who are outside, because he was already like facing a harsh background in the home as well. So that was one. Then the other was goodwill hunting, because even Will's character can be like mapped a lot with this main character. So maybe we can have one sequel where like in Kapoor and Sons it was that like either the father would be in the deathbed or Ram Kapoor character can be in the deathbed, and then like they explore what happened after they left and what kind of brought them back here. And of course the psychology aspect has to come. So maybe I think Saurav suggested a prequel in which Bhairav Singh's childhood, like abusive childhood, would be shown. Like I'm presuming it has to be a bit abusive for him to become this person. So maybe these all can be covered.
That is amazing. Like for example, I just for random reason I remembered Godfather ka second part jo tha, usme how they were showing the growing up of our main Godfather and Al Pacino's character as well parallelly. So it could work like that as well. कि दोनों parallel stories चल रही है एक दूसरे के.
So what I think is, of course, they're moving to Mumbai, right? Because his friends were living in Mumbai. So Arjun and Rohan are moving to Mumbai. Rohan wants to become a writer, obviously, and so I think the sequel can explore his struggle as a writer in Mumbai, because like Mumbai is such a huge hub of opportunities and all, but it's so tough to get into. Like I don't know if he wants to. So of course he starts with poetry. But then if he wants to write first films, or if he just wants to tell stories, then the sequel can obviously explore his struggle as a writer, the plight of an artist kind of thing, like a little happier version of Pyasa maybe. Because even in Pyasa, he's struggling to get his work published and recognized. So something of that kind with respect to Rohan. And obviously we should explore, the sequel can explore Arjun's journey from a 6-7-year-old boy to his adolescence, and how Rohan is dealing with that and how he's earning for the both of them. Basically that both of them struggling to live in this huge city of Mumbai. And also we can about Bhairav Singh, I think the sequel should kind of go back to him in terms of, I don't know if he's trying to connect with, but I think there should be some track where he's trying to get in touch with Rohan for Arjun, because I think he's also marrying for a third time, right? So I think maybe the women's perspective in his life she would probably ask him to go get his son back, at least one of his sons back. So something of that kind maybe, but again, in the end, where Arjun refuses to go back with him.
Would things have been different if Rohan's or Arjun's mother was around? Do you think the cycle of violence would have been the same if anybody's mother or any maternal influence would have been around? Do you think kuch alag hota?
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, it'll definitely be different if there's a mother figure around. I mean, this is not to say that, just the presence of a mother figure alone can make things different, because mothers can be abusive too. But like, this question made me draw parallels to sex education, where, the story of Adam and, Michael Croft, where even he's facing a similar situation. Like Adam has a very troubled relationship with his father. He's not able to meet his expectations of whom he wants to be. But then I think there maybe the presence of the mother figure there did influence both of them. She was able to like neutralize so much of that tension which was there. So I think the presence of the mother figure, it will certainly make a difference. I mean, like, this is just assuming that, the mother figure is like not as toxic as the father figure in this case. But then, yeah, it should be like, things should be a little better. But I'm not sure if I can just call it the presence of feminine energy. Maybe like, someone who's a little softer, maybe a bit more, maybe what both of them needed was a bit of warmth, and that warmth was lacking in their relationship. So like, you see that kind of thing coming from his uncle, who was like, Rohan was able to feel some sort of warmth towards his uncle. But then in this particular house where there's the father and the two brothers, that warmth was lacking. So maybe that's what was necessary, more than, just calling it a mother figure who's needed there.
I definitely feel that during the movie also they have shown when he's when he's looking at the pictures, childhood pictures in the album. So his mother is obviously a very comforting, very loving, normal, not toxic presence in his life for sure. They have pictures till him being, I think, around 7 or 8 years with his mother. His Chachu also tells him that your mother loved you very much. She wanted you to be a writer. I think his mother would have been a very protective, comforting presence in his life for sure. But I am not sure if that would make any difference to Bhairav's character, because as a psychologist and as a person who's gone through a lot of stuff, I feel that abusers have very classic patterns, and Bhairav had all the abusive person's classic traits, and they do not change. They don't change at all. That is for sure. They don't have remorse. They don't have regret. They don't think of anybody but themselves. They can't help it. That's the way their brain is wired, basically. So abusers come under the dark triad of personalities. So that also made me think of the ending. Like last night, I was just watching the ending, and it made me wonder that the movie ends with that note where it's written that don't try to find us, because I will complain to the police, and it's a criminal offense what you've done. And he closes the door. But with my experience, I feel that it's not so easy to get rid of someone like that from your life, because the police isn't very protective of your rights.
Right.
And you are stalked, and you are harassed. And stalking and harassing is not something that they want to take an FIR of also. Realistically speaking, I don't know what probably Bhairav would have tried getting hold of both of them. I don't know. That's a very depressing thought. So I don't even want to go there.
I think the scenario would be very similar to what his senior was telling him about, that in his household, he also had an abusive father and he had his mother. So I think firstly, instead of the children being the target, then maybe the mother would have been the target of all that abuse. And I don't know if it will be physical or just verbal or how it will be, but I think that will be the case. And if somebody not rebelling like Rohan was trying to do and accepting of that because they are either soft or they are avoiding confrontation or whatever. So I think just similar to what his senior was saying would happen, that the mother would be taking all the abuse for the children. Even if Rohan would have tried to rebel, mother would have told Rohan to straighten up instead of the father. I think that's what they were trying to show with that character of the senior. That he is also another version of Rohan, where he realized that society does not accept of this rebel.
But even if her mother presence was there, it wouldn't have been a different case. What Asis speak because then jo uske father ka the whole anger would have been shifted to वहाँ पे, and जो इसका rebel है, it could have been much more थोड़ा सा और ऊपर होता, because he would have might have killed him, और अपने माँ के साथ भाग जाता with his brother. So mommy, so I mean, if I'll consider, I'm sorry for saying this term again and again, so I can consider कि Rohan के father has this presence. So I mean, उसके biography को तो ज़्यादा evolve नहीं करा है कि Rohan के father has what sort of biography. Does a woman's presence was there in his life, motherly figure, और उसकी कोई बहन थी या नहीं. It hasn't been described. उसका 2 भाई है वो दोनों. And so mostly I can consider कि अगर उसके father के life में it would have been a presence of mother का, then it could have been a different case, because then he wouldn't have been seeking validation, because it's his validation, internal validation. उसके father का it's internal validation that is related to mommy issues, but his validation is basically external validation. He wants someone to appreciate his poetry. He wants someone to appreciate what he does in that way.
So I think that if his mother was around, it would have been very difficult for him to leave the toxic situation. I think he would have felt a lot of guilt leaving his mother like back in that house, and that would have made it very, very difficult for him to leave. And I think what Ashish said, that he would have kind of wanted to stay there because his mother's also getting abused, and he would not want to leave that. And his mother would try to get him out of the house, but the guilt would have like really not let him go.
I know it's very toxic positivity kind of parallel, but maybe we can draw parallel to Secret Superstar, where they like initially they take on the trauma and everything, and they take on the abuse, but then they decide like, okay, it's enough, and then three of them maybe they flee away or something. I know it's kind of not much possible, but just if
I think my answer is mostly similar in the sense that things would be different but not better. And so like if I think of it in like a chronological way, Bachpan mein all the abuse, most of the abuse would be directed towards the mother. And at some point when the kid is like around 9, 10 years old, he finally, realizes what's happening in his house and he tries to defend his mom. And what would essentially happen is I think it gets worse for both of them. Like when the mom defends the kid, Bhaira would get more angry at the mother, and if the kid defends the mom, more angry on the kid, and so on. And again, like how someone said, he wouldn't be able to leave on his own, or even when he's off at boarding school, he wouldn't be able to feel free of his dad because a sense of unease and guilt would always follow him. That my mother is stuck there with no agency, no escape route, and I'm here at boarding school. So mere liye theek thak hai fir bhi, but she's still stuck there. And in the end, I think it would overall be worse because he's grown up in a very dysfunctional household, always had to see his mom being abused like that. And eventually, I just think that the mom and the kids should unite and like leave. But it would obviously be very difficult. But the whole thing would be very different, completely different, and his trauma would be different and I think worse.
One of the last scenes of the film was him running away from his father and eventually meeting him and just moving ahead. ek tarike se. The film starts with them running away from the hostel, and there's a lot of running happening. There's a lot of escaping or a lot of running away from where you are thing happening. So for me personally, the film sort of ended at the point when he was running away and he smiled at his dad and he's left off. But there is some sort of an epilogue, like at the end where he comes back, and that entire scene of him coming back to get his younger brother. Do you think the film would have been complete without that bit? वो डालना जरूरी क्यों था? अगर मैं बोलूं कि यार यहाँ पे फिल्म एंड कर रहा है, do you think the film would have done justice to all the characters?
In a Bollywood sense, क्या कहते हैं Bollywood film, मसाला film और entertainment film बनाने के लिए they have to make that happy ending. कहानी खत्म है या शुरुआत होने को है with a very moving tone. कहते हैं bare fields they are running, but it's also about the fact that if you guys have seen Joyland, so Joyland के ऊपर Rahul Desai has written this review आज ही, जिसका title है the Price of Liberation, and it talks about how in Joyland Mumtaz का character chooses death instead of escape. So it's not like it's easy to choose death and commit suicide rather than liberating away from your family. And like if you think from a sane man's perspective, these two kids in a different world without having any sort of पैसा, or they even didn't rob कहते उसके पापा का तिजोरी वगैरह. If in a general sense they should have get थोड़ा सा तो पैसा वगैरह in order to survive in a world, but they didn't even do that. So it's more of a tragic ending कि दो नए बच्चे जा रहे हैं कैसी दुनिया में with so much of baggage and they don't have anything to do, but people have started romanticizing it in a way कि it's so liberating, it's so कहते हैं we can also break free, we can also liberate ourselves, but it's not the reality. The real world is much more danger, or it's sort of a tragic in that sense.
You mentioned running as an escape. The first running scene between Ronit Roy and his son, they take a tour of the whole Jamshedpur. We see the whole Jamshedpur through their running, and there is a conflict between them. That yes, Ronit Roy is stronger and his son is not stronger, and the same scene repeats in the ending running climax, where he wins and the conflict continues, but the hero has emerged, and it is a coming of age film. And there is one beautiful storytelling. He has not used words to say that time has changed. Ronit Roy gets a letter and a watch. He returns the watch to his father. So that says that the time has changed. It is a coming of age. I will create my own time. I will create my own journey.
That is amazing. And also because वो एक उसके family का एक generational एक symbol था. And him returning it and telling that I'm not going to be a part of this this generational trauma as well, and this generational there's this idea that I'm going to continue what you have kept on doing and what people have been doing all these years, years in my family. I'm going to continue. I'm giving it back to you. So that also is sort of ending the cycle.
Yeah, it's true that this movie is full of symbolisms and motives and lots of unsaid things, subtext. So this whole sequence, it really like lifts one up when you're watching it. The sequence where he starts running and then Ronit Roy starts running behind him, and then I just see the intensity with which it's happening. And at one point, they just show that he's just almost catching his jacket, and then that split second he just like sprints, and then gradually he realizes now the father is not able to catch up with him, and you see Ronit Roy's face, and you see this person with the intensity with which he's running, and then slowly the smile breaks on his face, and then somewhere aage jaake he stops and turns back, and then that smirk wala smile on his face, no, it says so much. It says finally the breaking has happened. He's found wings, he's found his own identity. That split second, that realization, I can assure you that those kind of moments do happen when you actually realize that you're not actually trapped, that you can break free, and that's a split second realization that happens. So that was really I think the best way to bring the movie to a closure. And Rohan being the kind of person he was, I would not have reconciled with the story if he hadn't gone back for his brother, because we are developing a character who's different from his father for sure, and we're bringing that, they want to bring that contrast. So he had to go back and rescue his brother as well, because of the kind of character he was the kind of person he was.
Yeah, I also wanted to talk about the hospital scene only. It's because I feel the entire movie was just Rohan coming into a whole like caregiving kind of a person that his father wasn't. And I think that is the entire point of showing that last scene. Also, in terms of like cinematography, I think Motwani does like this excellent job of using colors and, to show emotions that you cannot speak it out. And if you see the last shot of the film where he's finished reading Bhairav's finished reading the letter and he's going inside, the room behind him is entirely dark, so he's going into a darkness, he's literally moving into a darkness, and as a character like Rohan would never want to leave Arjun in that kind of a darkness. So I think that's the importance of that scene. Every scene with like that shows Rohan away from his father has light colors, has greenery, has trees, has like so much of energy in it. And then when his dad's there, there's always like that darkness and there's like a gloomy sense of feeling. So I think that from a cinematography point of view, I think that color thing really played for the last scene, especially. We had done this movie in our college, and our sir pointed out that the names of the characters have meanings. Like Bhairav is known in Hindu mythology, he's the god of punishment. Arjun's literal meaning is pure or white, and Rohan's meaning, the Sanskrit word, is to ascend. So I think even that is like a really cool, like, like an Easter egg that Motwani did. And again, it plays into how the last resolution of the movie is. That's all.
Wow. No, thank you for that. Thank you, college professor. Thank you, Esther, for that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And also, I feel the reason why he was able to, I don't know if it's cause and effect, kaise baithega us cheez ka, but the fact that he was a writer, the fact that he was a poet, the fact that he could empathize to that level was why he was able to see Arjun and see what he was facing as well, and go beyond what, because it's very easy to indulge in yourself and go in a self pity zone, because aap itna face kar rahe ho. For him to move out of his own indulgence and see the other person in front of him who's facing something or might face the inevitable, which could be inevitable, jo wo already face kar raha hai, for him to see that, maybe it's because he was a writer, or maybe because he was empathetic and that is why he's a writer. Like, I don't know the cause and effect, but there is some correlation to that.
He had to be made an extreme character because otherwise he would not have been redeemable. So that brought me to a parallel from another movie, which is Thappad. And in Thappad, the character is not extreme, and it's only one time that he slaps. And I think he still is not redeemable, because the fact that you are violent on someone else who is in a less powerful position than you, physically maybe or financially, is abuse, and it is just not redeemable. So that was one thing I wanted to say. And the other thing was that I just love the visual motifs in the film. And so the staircase, all the scenes in the staircase, the scenes where he's working in the factory, and then when he comes out and there's this tall grass among which he's walking, and there's the factory in the background, there's smoke, and here he's walking in that grass, and then he sits near the railway the tracks, and then he starts writing. All those visuals, and the way Jamshedpur has been shot, the way they're running in the greenery, and the river around which the bench. There's this scene where the Chacha and Rohan are sitting on one bench, and the kid and Bhairav is sitting on the other bench, and they're keeping hands like that, and the shot is from behind. And then there is these shots of rain as well during the hospital. There's the scenes of rain at various places, and the barbed wire, that's so beautiful, and it says so much. Like every time I watch this movie, I'm just blown away. I I have so much to say. The poetry is another thing altogether. Like it's such beautiful poetry. My goodness, unbelievable.
रोने थोड़े के लिए मेरे को बहुत बुरा लगता है कि यार हर पिक्चर थप्पड़ खाता रहता है वो अपने बेटे से, टू स्टेट्स में भी, यहाँ पे भी, मतलब बड़ा मुझे बुरा लगता है उसके लिए। मतलब या तो उसको रीइंकार्नेट कर लेते हो, या तो हमेशा एकदम एकदम ऐसे मतलब सही रहता है वो हमेशा। फील वेरी बैड फॉर हिम honestly.
I have to say this, Sankalp, that Ronit Roy's character is so powerful, and the way he's just glaring, the intensity of, you just feel that aggression coming out of him, even though probably not much of any blood or any raising of hand as such is not shown, but just his body language and the way he's imbibed that character, the way he's glaring at his son, all that, it just creates that ambience of so much scare and fear.
Yeah, absolutely. And Ronit Roy is that kind of guy, and it's so easy for, like, I think it's his comfort zone to play that character now, because he's done it so many times. I can think of at least 5 movies where he's the worst guy you can ever meet. Like this film, there was this film called Boss, if you guys remember, the Akshay Kumar film he had done. Ugly, he was the same guy. Like just the patheticest, but most pathetic dude you will ever meet. 2 states, and matlab, there's a very long list. Even like a film like Kabil, where he was where Hrithik Roshan is blind. So matlab, he's played this, like it's an Akshay Khanna ka, like he's the policeman in every film now. Like matlab वैसा है उसके लिए कि मतलब मैं नींद में भी कर लूंगा। मैं नींद में भी मस्त थप्पड़ खा लूंगा, थप्पड़ मार दूंगा। It's become that for him now.
I am the kind of person who looks more into colors than what is said and done. From the moment the movie starts, we see these guys in complete darkness. Like we don't see their faces until quite some time in the beginning. So it is very much. So I think from there only we get a certain certainty that these people are used to living in the height. They are not used to be open and out loud. They do stuff in the darkness only, in behind a mask or things like that. The major point for me was that we hear Rohan saying that he has not been he has not seen his father for the past 8 years, and I think that maybe Bhairav was not as abusive with Rohan as he was with Arjun, because till Rohan sees belt marks on his back, he did not realize that his father can be abusive as well. That was the point where he realized that this is where he has crossed the line. Because in the beginning we see that even Rohan was treating Arjun the same way. Like he was telling him कि ये मेरा है, ये सब मेरा है, तुम पैदा हुए तो उसके पहले से ये सब मेरा है। I think तब है ना, तब रोहन को कैसा लग रहा होगा कि ये 8 साल से मुझे नहीं मिल रहे, इसके साथ। He still had that love kind of emotion with him, and the hatred was only for him not meeting him, not how he treated. So we see that this change that in Bhairav also, this change has come over the years. It was not like he was there. He was like this since the beginning. We hear them, talking about ke Babuji hote तो वो ऐसा ही करते या इससे बुरा ही करते. Obviously he has some generational toxicity with him, but I think he grabbed onto that in a much later stage in his life. Rohan moved out and his wife died or things like that. इसीलिए when you see that he's drunk, he loses himself a bit. He's asking questions that he was supposed to ask. He's letting know कि वो आया था स्कूल. तब वो है ना बहुत ही, I think I sympathized with the Bhairav's character. We see that वो बोलता है कि मैं आया था, मैं तुम्हारे प्रिंसिपल से भी मिला, पर तुमको बहुत खुश थे, तो मैं तुमको नहीं मिल रहा है. So that clearly shows that he cares about his happiness. He is not just some akdu papa who is just abusive, plain right abusive. And I think that was also the moment where Bhairav realized that he is not going to add on to his happiness. He has lost that touch of himself within him only. That is why he was like, तुम खुश हो, मुझे मालूम है मैं शायद तुमको मिलूंगा तो खुश नहीं रख पाऊंगा. And I think that is also why he could not gather the courage of going to visit him बार बार. Like he says in the movie also कि मैं है ना क्या बोलते हैं, मैं जितना कर सकता था बहुत किया है, मैंने बहुत किया इन दोनों के लिए, पर इनको कुछ नहीं है. तो फ्रॉम हिज पॉइंट ऑफ व्यू इज लाइक कि मेरे पास जितना भी था, जो भी मेरी थोड़ी इमोशनल कैपेसिटी थी, जितनी भी मेरी फाइनेंशियल कैपेसिटी थी, मैंने सब दिया ही है. अब जो मेरे पास है ही नहीं वो मैं कहाँ से ला कर दे. एंड दैट इज व्हाई आई थिंक बाय द एंड व्हेन आल्सो ही रिसीव्स द लेटर, you don't see a disappointed face on it. He is okay with it. I had a constant fear when we were introduced to Madhvi and her kid. Like, he was so abusive with the boys. What will he do with the girls? But then I realized that at the end of the day, maybe he just needs some warmth himself. And that is why these two feminine characters have been brought in his life. I don't believe that Madhvi is not aware that he is this rigid person, but she has still chosen to be with him, so that has to be some background in there. At the end he says okay, in the beginning when he comes, he says Rohan comes, he says कि मैं मेरे पापा की शक्ल भी भूल गया था, मैं स्टेशन पे देख रहा हूँ ये किसका बाप है. At that time he is wearing the same red vest that he wears at the end while walking away. ठीक है, in between he never wore any of those piece of clothing, not that jeans, not that t-shirt, not that red vest. He wore that at the end only. And he mentions in the letter कि एक इमोशन है जो आपको कभी समझ में नहीं आएगा, प्यार. क्योंकि वो जिस जगह से आया था उधर से बहुत प्यार लेके आया, जितना टाइम वो इधर रुका उतना टाइम उसको वो प्यार नहीं मिला. अब वो जब वापस जा रहा है तो वो अपने चाचा से भाई अर्जुन से प्यार लेकर जा रहा है. And in general we connect the color of red with the color of love. And I think that is where the whole red vest has come to symbolization. Secondly, like I'll also like to point out the light, not the generic light, but the bulb light that has been used in the movie, throughout the movie. Amazing. Like in the initial section of the movie where they have just met and they have just started living together, the father and the son. Like during the section where Bhairav said कि जैसे अर्जुन मुझे सर बुलाता है तुम भी मुझे सर बुलाओ, तो वैसे आपको दिखता है कि उसके सिर्फ बोलो ना सिर्फ 40% उस पे लाइट हो, एक रे ऑफ लाइट आ रहा है सिर्फ 40% पे, बाकी पे नहीं आ रहा. एंड सिमिलरली जब वो थोड़ा पीछे जाता है, रोहन थोड़ा आगे आता है, तो उतना ही परसेंट ऑफ लाइट रोहन पे भी. And that goes on throughout the movie. हम तुम थोड़ा एंड बाद में जब अपन थोड़े आगे इन लोगों के बीच के डिस्कशंस में जाने लगते हैं, जो ऐसे ही थोड़े से क्या बोलते हैं डार्क है या थोड़े से क्या बोलते हैं रॉब जमाने वाले हैं, आप वैसे वैसे देखोगे तो जो लाइट है वो भी इंक्रीज हो. लाइक आई टोल्ड यू द बिगनिंग से रिकॉल द हॉस्पिटल, पूरा परफेक्ट लाइट में हो रहा है जब वो वापस कन्फ्रंट कर रहा है. बिकॉज आई थिंक के स्टार्टिंग में वो दोनों ही लाइक फ्रॉम बोथ देयर साइड्स दे आर शोइंग ओनली सर्टेन परसेंटेज ऑफ देमसेल्व्स टू द अदर पर्सन. मतलब बाकी का पूरा उन्होंने छुपा के रखा है. इट इज स्टिल इन द डार्क. बाय द हॉस्पिटल सीन दे आर बोथ लाइक बहुत हुआ है अभी, एंड दे आर बोथ इन प्रॉपर लाइट इन फ्रंट ऑफ ईच अदर. वो इसको कायर बुलाते हैं तो ये सामने वापस बोल देते हैं कि आप भी झूठे थे. सेम हैपेंस ऑन द स्टेयरकेस. शुरू के स्टेयरकेसेस के सीन देखोगे ना तो लाइट बहुत प्रॉपर नहीं है, पर बाद में आ जाते हैं ना तो दोनों पूरे दिख रहे हैं. आप एवरीथिंग इज फ्रंट एंड. सो आई थिंक ये सब के थ्रू भी ना वी रियलाइज कैसे उनका रिलेशनशिप ग्रो हुआ है. सो फॉर द एंड व्हेन a very crucial thing that I think has been missed here is the Chacha talking to Rohan, which was not, clip has not been said to us. Like, we don't know what is said to him. But I personally would like to believe Rohan going back to take Arjun. That was not the generational gap that Rohan wanted to create, but the Chacha wanted to create. I think the Chacha had a push in that. The Chacha made him realize something along those lines. Because you see, कि वो उन लोगों का बात होता है, उसके बाद he goes back, he takes that picture book, he is looking at his bachpan ka photo, his mom ka photo, and after that, he realizes what love is and what he has forgotten. And he realizes that the same amount of love which he received from his mom, Arjun needs to receive from him. I think that was the kind of relation that played out in, Rohan going back to take Arjun. And that is how the letter was written as well. कि तुम अर्जुन को वो चीजें नहीं दे सकते, तुम अर्जुन को प्यार नहीं दे सकते, तो मैं दे दूं.
To say Ronit Roy ka character was my favorite throughout the film because it's easier to play a positive, happy, charming, smiling, and bringing like good ushering good vibes, but it takes a lot to play Bhairav Singh with that kind of a conviction and to make the audience who is watching you feel that like if I could just go and hit you, like just smack it left you black and blue. To make the audience feel is a very big. I mean, I think even better than Two States. If you just take Two States and this film, Udaan, the others you mentioned, I have actually not yaad nahi, but clearly Two States and this one, Two States maybe there are like because the Two States the character doesn't come into it's a very side arc, except that last thing which he does, But since Udaan mein, he's the central trunk, the movie borders around there. So I mean, I loved how he played, the character.
One fun trivia I read somewhere that the car was actually stolen initially, and the thief sold it to the crew without knowing them. So they were using a stolen car. And also, one important thing I feel, and that is coming from me having some friends from Jharkhand and Bihar and all that. So there's an aspiration of all the parents that they are there, that they want to send them to very good schools because they know the schools there are not great. So it's like a sacrifice to send their kids to good schools outside for boarding schools. It's not a punishment like it is generally said in movies that send your kid to boarding school if he's a troublesome kid. And Bishop Cotton is like one of India's best schools, and Ratan Tata himself studied there. So it's that kind of aspirational school. So they were coming from that angle and trying to, I'm assuming they are trying to say that the parent, the kind of disciplinarian parent, he also wanted that for his kid. Like that was his aspiration, that his kids also learn and do well there. So it is not just a totally black character, it's a gray character. And funny enough, Ratan Tata also has broken the family lineage and by not having kids and so forth, and Rohan also did that. And also a very another fun fact, Ronit Roy, in personal life he runs a security company, and throughout the movie he was looking like a bouncer. So that was also very funny to me. One scene in which, like in the kind of transition they show in the character, in the first scene they show that because Rohan was late coming downstairs, he has to now drop Arjun to school, and he's walking, and Arjun is trying to like hold his hand, but he's retracting. Nahi pakad bhai, main tera lena dena nahi hai kuch. Then after the hospital, he is the one everywhere holding his hand. Wherever he is taking him, he is the one holding his hand. So that's when you know that now he doesn't see Arjun as like a Sautela bhai. Now he's seeing a reflection of himself in Arjun, and he's like, I will ensure that he does not have the same life as I'm thinking I'm having or whatever.
And I agree to about the poetry which was written by Satyanshu Singh and another writer, and the background music and the entire score, because without that the film is very basic. Like that's the only word that I can think of right now. Obviously the direction is very smart, there are very good setup and payoffs in the film, but without the poetry, without the score, it's very, like for example, the moment he comes out of the house, कॉलोनी उसमें बाहर निकलता है, तभी वो आजादी वाला वो सुर लगता है, वो भी बहुत सही है. मतलब like टाइमिंग उसका बहुत सही है, very very obvious but अच्छा बैठता है. it's a very acha baithne wala film, like a very effectively done things.
In the beginning of the film where they expelled and then Rohan is leaving the hostel with the warden, right? The warden is going to drop him off to his father, and Manjot Singh's character is looking down on him from the dorm room, him and his other two friends, and like Manjot Singh is joking about the warden from above, like he's all in the joke and he's going all in with the jokes, like going all in with the mockery. And pardon my language, he's saying from above like मुच्छेड़ बता दो किसके ब्लाउज में हाथ डाल रहा था ये सब, like he's saying from above and he's going all in because they've been expelled, right? But how does it matter? So he's going all in and he jokes about that. Everyone laughs, even the kids below who are helping laugh. And then after that, the camera zooms in to Manjot Singh's face, and there's this slight change of expression on his face, like which goes from mocking the warden and laughing about his own joke to the expression of a realization where he's not sure when he'll see Rohan again. Like there's a slight change of expression, and that is why the camera zooms on his face. And I feel that slight change of expression is incredible acting from Manjot Singh. Just if you guys can do that, just watch that one scene again where his expression changes in one fraction of a second, in a fraction of a second. And then Ron's obviously he sits in his car, and the song starts. "Aankhon ke pardo pe pyara sa." So it's incredible right now. I feel that the writing there is just seamless and it's incredibly done.
जब वो उसके घर का पहला शॉट है, सो जब वो बोर्डिंग स्कूल से निकल रहा होता है, उसकी वो टी शर्ट पहन के निकलता है एंड बैक पे उसके टी शर्ट के लिखा है लव एंड हैप्पीनेस, ठीक है। और जब वो घर पे आके बैठता है एंड व्हेन यू सी हिज टी शर्ट, वो एल का शेप कुछ इस तरह से बना है कि आगे जाके वो एस में ज्वाइन हो जाता है, एस सॉरी वी में ज्वाइन हो जाता है, वो एस बन जाता है जहां पे लिखा होता है लूज हैप्पीनेस।
My God.
Again, I would like to draw a parallel, but I would like to sum up in a parallel way. The parallel is between Kala, which was released recently by Anvita Dutt, and Udaan. Kala, matriarchy is being practiced. Swastika Mukherjee's character is the dominant figure, and in Udaan, Ronit Roy is the dominant figure. So matriarchy and patriarchy. So same gender is oppressing. Here the male character is oppressing the male character, and in Kala, female character is oppressing the female character. So means oppression has no gender. Yes, patriarchy is a practice in Indian society, but oppression has no gender. So that's one point. And secondly, I would like to draw the parallel between Udaan and Death in Ganj by Konkana Sen Sharma. So there, Vikrant Masi's character, Shutu's character, he also goes through depression, and in Udaan, the child also goes through depression. Everyone tells him to man up, but there is a pain. In Indian cinema, it is very less explored that the pain of a man, the vulnerability of a male character, how beautifully male characters are written, that they are facing the pain, they are allowed to cry. Films like this should be made where we explore male character not as hero but as human.